G'day guys and welcome to JA Edits podcast number 1. Thanks for tuning in, and on today's episode we've got the 4 times King of the Desert Stephen Greenfield. This is my first podcast, so apologies to any sound if there's some interruptions in the background. It could be PJ Sabo next door pressure washing something, or the dogs going off in the background. So this is podcast number 1. I've never done a podcast before, so this is all new to me. We got Stephen Greenfield from Alice Springs, 4 times King of the Desert.
Yep.
So tell us just a bit about growing up in Alice Springs and how you got involved in dirt bikes and Finke and stuff.
So I lived in Alice most of my life. I was only still in nappies when I got to town, so that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I grew up literally just around dirt bikes. My brother rode dirt bikes.
Yeah.
Friends, everybody. So could never really get into it because I couldn't afford it at an early age. So I wasn't like a 4-year-old kid on a motorbike. I think I was 11 before I got my first motorbike. So didn't start real early.
Yeah.
And then just got into it. I think my second bike started racing. And then just 80s, like that was on 80s then. YZ80E was my first bike.
Yeah, right.
1978 model.
Yeah.
And then just got another second-hand YZ80H after that. And then got a little bit of sponsorship from a bike shop, local bike shop, Kevlar and Yamaha back then.
Yeah, cool.
Started racing, started winning races, started being competitive. So
So it all started off with, like, obviously motocross at a young age. And did they have enduros back then in Alice? Or?
Yeah, there was. They did. And they were just like, for the juniors, I think they were like hour and a half enduros.
Yeah.
And they were just out in local station properties, basically, not far out of town, most of them.
Yeah.
Some of the bigger ones were a bit further out of town, but look, it's all pretty close to town. It was pretty cool.
What age did you start to get involved in desert racing, like Finke and stuff?
So my first Finke, I was actually 16 in my first Finke, which was 1986. That was my first attempt, and that was on a YZ250. Yeah. And that I'd actually got down to Finke in, I think, 11th outright. And on the way home, it actually a rock come up and hit the radiator hose and split the radiator hose. I killed it. So I didn't even. And I just moved into top 10 actually, because one of the other guys that he had an engine failure about 5k's back from where mine stopped. So so that was my first year at Finke. It was a borrowed YZ250 off a good mate of mine who's passed now. He lent me his bike, and that was pretty cool. And back then it was so primitive. Like we were, we were mounting radiators up on the head stand because they put big tanks on them. Like this was back in the rough days. It's just different technology and different way of going about it. So much compared to nowadays.
They were just big, heavy pigs back then.
But like still big horsepower. I mean, I remember that YZ250. It was a YZ250. So it was an 85 model. Yeah. Man, the thing just had horsepower everywhere.
Nice.
For an old bike, it's still good to ride, So that was 86 DNF, first year Finke. Yeah. Second year, I thought, okay, I'll go back to a 125 class. Yeah. Rode a 125. It was my own 125. And man, it was the slowest race I've ever done.
Oh, really? That thing would have been screaming the whole way.
Oh, man. Like, and you just, you got it geared so it goes maximum speed, but then you get like a headwind. Yeah. And you're back down to 50. Yeah. And literally, man, you see something coming and you stare at it for ages, and then it slowly goes past.
That's what it was like.
Flat out, like 120, 125 k's an hour, man. It was
they don't even have 125s these days. Nah. It's funny to think how you guys used to race on 125s. Yeah. That's cool.
Like the 250F equivalent now, the 250F will do 140 k's an hour, like way faster than the old 125s. Yeah. But I won the 125 class that year and got 27th outright. Yeah, and that's sick. And the 125 couldn't go any faster. Like it was
that's it. That's all she had.
Just all she had. Put a piston in it, I think, because you just like it's on the rev limiter for 2.5 hours down. So you just like put another piston in it down there. Play it safe. Yeah. And so it was at 87, then 88. 88, I rode a bike called a TDR 250, which was like a Yamaha twin cylinder, very similar to the Banshee engine and their quads.
Yeah, okay.
And they put that into this road trail bike, and we did a lot of work on it and put my YZ250 suspension into it, forks and shock.
Yeah.
And it was fast. I think did 180 k's an hour.
Yeah, right.
It was just like went from 125 to this thing that was a rocket.
Yeah, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah,
what have I got myself into?
I remember passing Jimmy Ellis, because Jimmy Ellis rode. So I had a YZ250U that was my race bike, and then I rode this TDR 250.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Ellis said he was coming over, so we gave him my bike, and we just put some other suspension in it and gave him that. And I remember passing him on the road section.
Yeah.
Like I was just like twinned on this twin cylinder bike.
Yeah, that's so sick. Yeah, every time I watch all the old videos of the road section, it's just so sick. Like, because there's no, well, you don't have road section anymore, but the old videos where you're literally hanging off the back, like sitting on the back mudguard. Yeah. That's cool.
And there's like because we used to come out on the road at Deep Well, so 60 k's down, you'd pop out onto the main highway then, and you'd do that highway all the way down to Rodinga. It's about 30 k's.
Yeah.
And we used to, and the road was wide and it had big windrows on it.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of like 90 degree, and they're still in there now, a lot of 90 degree corners in there, but they're real sweeping big bends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And depending on how big your balls were, is whether you could just hold the thing flat, go out to the windrow, cut across the apex of the corner and drift out to the windrow on the other side without backing off. It used to be a game to play in your head, you know.
Yeah, well, even coming into it now in the cars, like just driving normally, they're sharp. Yeah. So I couldn't imagine coming fifth gear wide around there on a bike.
And even when I got onto the CR500s, it used to be it'd just be a mental challenge. Because you know on paper you could physically do it. Like you're doing 175, 180 kilometres an hour.
Yeah.
And you know that if you get to the top of the windrow on the entry, cross the apex at the perfect spot and get the windrow on the outside, you can literally, you don't have to back off.
Nah, that's sick.
But anyway, that bike ended up running out of fuel just out of Finke.
Yeah, okay.
So I didn't make. So I got 13th outright. That was my third year. I got 13th outright.
Yeah.
And that was a good.
That's
result.
still good. Yeah, top 20.
So, but so it was that 88. 89 was my first year on the podium. So I rode a YZ250 in 89.
Yep.
And put it on the third outright.
Straight from 13th to third.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
That was my fourth Finke. So ended up on the podium behind Alan Rowe and Mark Winter.
Yeah.
Were the winners that year and second.
Yeah. And
I was like 15 or 14 minutes, I think it was, between back to me, but there was nobody in between us. So.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And so that was introduction to the podium.
Yeah.
And then I think 1990 I had a bad crash on the way down.
Yeah, okay.
Ended up, I think, fourth or fifth outright that year.
Yeah.
I lost a fair bit of time on the way down. I copped a square edge. Oh, it was actually it was like a little channel where the water had run, and I copped it on an angle, and the thing just javellined me. And it actually dented the subframe on my bike. So it split the seat, dented the subframe underneath the seat.
Jesus.
And I was like, man, that's pretty good impact.
That's a big crash.
And filled my goggles up with dirt, rode to my second fuel stop with no goggles.
Yeah, right. And still managed to stay inside the top 5, which is
good. And managed to sort of get me shit together on the way home.
Yeah.
And had a decent run. But
yeah.
It was pretty average year. And so what was that, 90? 91 was my first introduction to 500s.
Yeah.
So 91 I got a WR 500, which was a rare Yamaha they built only for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
91, 92.
Yeah.
I rode one of them. What happened then? I blew the gearbox up. Only about 60 k's out of town. It jumped out of top gear. And just killed the gearbox in it. And that was it. Parked that one up.
No.
That was end of 1990.
Yeah.
1991 that was. So.
Yeah.
And then 92 I rode another WR, and it actually did a gearbox as well, but I was about 160 k's down the track in first outright when it actually did the gearbox.
Yeah, right.
And one of the scariest moments of my life was actually on that bike, because when the gearbox locked up, I was wide open in top gear going past Mount Squires checkpoint, which is like a vast clay panny area, like you're wide open top gear on hard packed ground.
Yes, yeah.
and the back wheel just locked and I pulled the clutch in, thinking it was just an engine seizure. But when I pulled the clutch in, it didn't stop the back wheel being locked because it did the gearbox.
Yeah.
So I ended up skidding off the track at 100 plus kilometres an hour, and just like literally like someone just locked the back brake up, and I'm just skidding and off through the bush over.
Jesus!
Yeah, it was.
I could only picture that.
Mate, it was probably one of the scariest moments. Like, and the thing was fast. The thing was due 170 easily back then. Even, and
that's insane,
mate. And it was literally. And I'm going through grass this big. You don't know what's in there. Rocks, holes,
ant hills,
everything, man. You just just skidding.
Oh shit.
And the chopper was actually following me because I was actually first out. Right, I was the first bike on the road.
Yeah.
And the chopper, when it happened, he swung back around and he come down real low to make sure I was alright. And like I just give him the thumbs up because I'd managed to pull the thing up and not axe myself and cartwheel through the scrub.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then he pissed off back to the next guy.
Shit.
But I think Randall won that year. One of Randall's many wins. So he won 91, 92, 93, 94, 95.
Yes, all in a row. And what happened with you those years? Like obviously 91, you said that was the gearbox.
Yeah, so that was a DNF.
Yeah.
That bike in 92 that did the gearbox down around Rumballara, I actually got it going.
Yeah.
And started it, and it kept stalling because the gearbox was locked up. And I actually just held the thing flat and just cracked the clutch, and it actually broke the weld because one of the gears had welded to the shaft.
Ah, okay.
And I had first gear and I rode it all the way to Finke in first gear, and I ran out of fuel in the river.
Yeah, right. Oh, Jesus.
So then I walked to camp, we threw it on the ute, and I drove back to town that night.
Yeah, that's done.
So that's done, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was my last year on a Yamaha.
Yeah.
So then we started on the Hondas after that. So in 92, 93 was my first Honda.
Yeah, yeah.
I reckon I was second outright behind Randall in 93.
Yeah.
And actually it was a funny year, 93. So while I was pre-running in 93, about 6 weeks before the event, I was right down the other end. I was only about 10 k's out of Finke coming back. And there was a dead branch or dead tree hanging out on the edge of the track. And I actually didn't really see it to the last minute. Anyway, it just sort of slapped against my foot. There was this branch hanging out.
Yeah. Anyway,
I thought nothing of it. Riding down the road. Got about 10 k's down the road and my foot went numb and was falling off the foot peg.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, pulled up with one of my mates. Said, something's wrong with my foot. Anyway, I looked down and there was a bit of stick hanging out of my boot. I said, that's not good. But it was sort of up the top of my boot, and I'm like, I pulled that out, so that didn't hurt.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I thought, something's wrong. So I rode back to the car, which was about another 20 k's. So I just rode down the access road, another 20 k's.
Yeah.
Got to the ute and pulled my boot off, and the stick had gone straight through the top of my foot, through my sock and into my foot, and nearly come out the bottom of my foot.
Oh, Jesus.
And still got the scars to prove it. And so that was like we were down. That was the second fuel stop. We was 160 k's down the track by then.
Yeah.
So I had to load the bike up, drive all the way back to town, into hospital, surgery.
Yeah.
Ended up pulling out a stick about the size of my finger like that.
Jesus.
Stick stuck in my foot.
Yeah, right.
So that was 6 weeks before Finke.
Yeah.
So I spent about 4 days in hospital.
Yeah.
And then I had this hole in my foot like that. I could actually see the tendons running to my toes through this hole where when they pulled all the wadding out. Because they packed it all in there, and then when they pulled it out, they're changing it. I'm looking at them going, wow, that's a big hole in my foot. You know?
Yeah, far out.
And I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to ride.
No.
No way that's going to heal up.
No
anyway, about 4 or 5 days before Finke, it actually closed up, and I got a boot on, went for a ride, and
it was all good.
Yeah, and when was that? So day one, I think I was second into Finke behind Randall.
Yep.
And then day 2 on the way home, I crashed at about, I would have been around almost right at the 165 mark on the way home.
Yep.
And snapped one side of my handlebars clean off. So right where the crossbar meets the handlebar, it was just snapped. Just snapped off, man. So like it's just hanging on the clutch cable. So I had one hand, and I rode. I measured it the next year. It was 11 kilometres I rode one-handed, and I couldn't get out of first gear. No, you get the second gear, the thing was just going slapping from one. But I got to the second fuel stop and they actually had spare handlebars there, believe it or not.
Yeah, right.
Changed a set of handlebars.
Yeah.
And
that would have taken a little bit of time, I'd imagine. Not too long.
Yeah, it took probably 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But I could hear, that was the year Craig Carmichael got third on a 250. And I could hear him coming.
Screaming.
So it was like, the thing this little CR250 was on back then was just screaming. I could hear it coming. I'm like, come on, hurry up, hurry up.
Yeah, quick.
Anyway, I got out just in front of him and finished up second.
Oh, that's all right then. That's not too
and
bad.
actually, that same race, I got a flat tyre on the way down.
Yeah, right.
So it was just
flat tyre and snapped handlebars.
And still got second. Which you couldn't do nowadays. Nowadays, you get a flat tyre, you're out.
Yeah.
You know, but the level of competition back then wasn't as high as it is now. It was more of a local race with some.
Yeah, that's right.
Some professionals used to come and do it, but it was more of a locals race back then.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was 93. That was a hell of a year. Again, another year on the podium.
Yeah.
94, I got third. Randall won it again. I can't even remember who got second actually. Might have been Griffo, because I know me and Darren Griffiths battled it out there for a while.
Yeah.
And then in 95, I got second again. It was the year Dan Ashcraft, the Yank won.
Yeah, so, I do remember that.
Was it 95? No, that was 96. Sorry, no, that was 95. 95 was Randall won it again, and I think I got second behind Randall in 95. And maybe Griffo was third actually that year.
Yeah.
And then and that was on the CR500s, back on the still on the big two bangers.
Yeah.
And then 96, Dan Ashcraft, the American, come over.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. He was actually here in 95, but he had bike problems, and I don't think he finished in 95.
Right.
I think he came out in 95. I can't remember. Anyway.
Yeah.
So 96 he ended up winning the race in 96, and I was second behind him, and I broke my thumb. I broke the knuckle on my thumb at Deep Well on the way down.
Yeah.
So I'd crashed. Somebody had the one of the spectators had buried a sleeper on the track just for a bit of fun.
Oh, right.
And I'm like top gear wide open on the CR500 and just hit this buried sleeper and just cartwheeled flat out, snapped the thumb. Fuck. Anyway, got down to Finke. Knew it was broken, but didn't want to come home in an ambulance.
Yep.
Got the local doctor down there to put some local anaesthetic in it so I could ride home the next day.
Yeah.
Come home, a lot of pain, but finished.
Yeah.
Second again.
Yeah, right.
Behind Ashcraft.
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of shit years, but a lot of good results. You know, so even seconds and thirds was still good back then.
Yeah, definitely. Like anyone who's on the podium at Finke is a gun.
Yeah, like it was, and it was. We spent a lot of time down there practicing and pre-running and getting all the bikes set up and all the rest of it. But I was still relying back then, and even up to 96, I was still relying on other people to do my suspension.
Yeah.
And I still didn't have a bike that I was happy with. I was still riding bikes that were semi-good. They weren't great bikes.
Yeah.
They were good enough to get me where I needed to go, but they held me back with suspension. I couldn't hang on to the thing. The front end was too firm. It was just beating me up all the time. So So in 97 was the first year I had some decent sponsorship available, some money, and I bought myself a complete set of forks and a new complete shock and bolted them in. It was a Riga shock, and it was a set of 45mm Mazzocchi forks, the old open cartridge Mazzocchis's.
In the CR500?
In the CR500, And literally it was like riding on a cloud compared to what I'd been doing for so many years.
You're on a completely different bike.
The time that next year was nearly 10 minutes faster than my time that I got second the year before.
Yeah, right.
Even though I'd had some issues with my thumb and all the rest of it, I still rode pretty well in 96. But in 97, I won the race outright.
Yeah. And
was like 10 minutes faster than my last year's time, you know. So.
Yeah.
And 90% of that was suspension.
Yeah, is that where you think you found out, like, right, suspension's the key down here?
Yeah, that was probably the first time that I'd actually ridden a bike that I could ride at my own potential and not be held back by a bike that didn't handle.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between just being able to jump on a bike and hold it flat and be able to hold that flat all the way. And you just physically couldn't do that on a CR500 without good suspension. The thing would, like I explained to people, when a CR500 is like a thoroughbred horse, like a race horse.
Yeah.
They don't want you to be riding them.
No.
They literally want to throw you off whenever they get the chance. And that was literally what the CR500s were like. And then when I put the suspension in there, it actually made it like an old mare that you could ride. You know, like it was just a completely different
like a
game.
couch.
Yeah, literally. You know, so that was the start of the the realisation that suspension was the big key. And you could have the fastest bike out there. And we did a lot of engine development back then, and we had bikes that would literally do 180 kilometres an hour on dirt. We clocked them with radar guns, and that was the first year that I got comfortably out in front where I knew I could be, and won quite easily. Then 98 I come back, same bike setup basically, and won again that year. Not quite as comfortably from memory as what I did in 97. But still, still fast enough to be able to win the race.
That's right.
And then 99 was a similar sort of. Started out the same way. I got into Finke first on day one. And then on day two, as I was actually coming into my last fuel stop on the way home, when I closed the throttle to pull into my fuel stop, the bike started making funny noises and was just running weird, and I thought, oh, what's going on here? And so while we were in the fuel stop, while they were putting the fuel in it, I jumped off and had a look underneath the tank to see if I could see anything obvious, and I could see coolant weeping around the head gasket. I'm like, it's done a head gasket, man. It's not going to make it.
No.
And I had about a 5.5 minute lead at that point. So I was like, okay, I'll just nurse it. I won't hold it flat. I'll just get it, get it close as I can to home. Anyway, I took off and got it sort of. I got about 20 k's down the road from the fuel stop, maybe 25. And not holding it flat, sort of backed it off a bit, sort of riding sort of 3/4 pace. You can't go too slow, otherwise you're going to get last, So,
that's right,
so I sort of backed it down a bit, and then I was about almost at the 40k June area now, and the thing just went pop. It popped a hole in the top of the piston,
and then she's all gone.
She was all over, and I literally, it popped and went brrrr, and I'm like, oh, fuck. Anyway, I put it down to first gear, and the thing was still like, still going. And I rode for like about 2 kilometres in first gear, like flat like that. And it was the funniest thing because Rick Hall was second behind me, and so I'm in first gear doing about 20 kilometres an hour. Like just got the thing on the stop in first gear, going nowhere,
just pushing it.
Anyway, so Rick pulls up next to me, like he nearly ran into the back of me because he's doing 170 and I'm doing 20. So and he pulls up next to me, big skid, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm flat. That's it, man. That's all I got.
You got a rope? You want to dig into town? I'll get second.
It was funny because he's looking at me going, well, what do I do? And I just waved to him. I said, mate, just go. Going. This is what it's all about. To finish first you must finish.
Exactly.
Anyway, I'd only got about 5 k's down the road. The thing just expired. And literally, when I pulled the engine apart, it had actually, the failing part was the clamp that holds the carburetor into the inlet manifold. It actually snapped through the band. The screw didn't come out. Nothing simple. It actually broke the metal band.
Far out.
And it sucked air in through the manifold, and it ended up running lean. And that's what cooked the head gasket. It ended up blowing it up basically. And I actually rode it until it melted the crankshaft and everything. It just
rode it to the ground.
Pull it out and throw it in the throw it in the heap.
Shit.
So the funny thing happened is the TV crew that were filming that year, they actually missed. They actually missed when the engine failed.
Oh, okay.
So they made me go and do a reenactment.
So they got just the chopper, for the movie.
Just for the movie. So I'm riding down there on the kill switch. And then, because when it actually happened, I was that angry and upset and all the rest of it. When the thing actually finally stopped, I was still doing 5 k's an hour, and I just ghosted it. I just got off and just let it go. Fuck you, exactly. Anyway, it was funny. There was a camp about 50 metres down the road. And they could see me coming. And they all started running towards me, and I'm like, no. You just stay there for a minute.
Stay there. I'm just going to let all my anger out.
I'm just going to go and kick some trees and kick my motorbike. And, So very frustrating. But it's character building. There's not much else you can say about it. But,
that's right.
So that was 99. So I'd won 97, 98. That would have been my 3rd in a row. But that one got taken away from me. And then in 2000... 2000 was probably my most dominating ride from every perspective from my own personal point of view. I won Prologue. I won day one. The river flowed overnight at Finke, and they actually made us start on the northern side of the river, which is the first time ever.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember sitting there, and we were sort of at the bottom of the dunes, because when you get on the northern side of the river, you got a bit of a clay pan area, and then it goes into the dunes, and they made us line up sort of at the bottom of the dunes.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there because they made everybody go across in single file, because they actually dammed the river for us to cross it.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I remember sitting there, being the first bike ready to leave, and I remember looking back, and there was like 380 bikes that year in the race.
Yeah, right.
And they're all just all lined up behind me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, they're all looking at me thinking, you know, they want to be like me.
We're coming for you.
Yeah, like that's what it was like, you know. And I'm sitting at the front going, man, I better get my ass going, because otherwise these guys are going to be chasing me. You know?
Yeah.
But I come home comfortably,
Yeah.
won by, I
No
can't
pressure,
remember.
really.
No, not even
Just
really
felt
any pressure.
comfortable and
Just
pushed.
Just rode how I knew I could ride.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It's a hard thing when you're in front, is judging the speed that you need to go at, because you don't know how fast the guys behind you are going.
Exactly.
You don't know if someone's catching you.
That's
you don't
right.
know.
Yeah.
You know, you really don't know.
So you could be thinking you're going quick enough, but the dude behind you could be catching you. You don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't want to. So you never want to ride above sort of 8-9 tenths. So you want to keep that safety margin, because if you crash, then you're out. So if you go too slow, they catch you. So there's this little window where you get it right, and knowing that pace that you can ride at and that's obviously what you need to do to win.
Yes.
You know. So
Yeah.
So and that was a good dominating year that year. I enjoyed that year.
Yeah.
So that was 2000.
After the bike blew up, you'd have been like,
so that would have been, and that was the most disappointing thing. So I'd won 97, 98, DNF 99, won 2000. So 99 didn't happen. I would have got 4 in a row.
Yeah, you would have been thinking there could have been 4, but it's 3.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and Randall had just won 5 in a row.
Yeah.
So I was sort of,
you were like trying
to catch, and then when 99 happened, it was like, I'm not going to make that now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So
PJ's watching this. PJ, keep it down.
Yeah, shut up, mate.
Shut up. That's right.
He's got the pressure washer out, so he can be up for a while.
And then 2001, from memory, you jumped on an XR.
So 2001, the XR 650 got released in 2000.
Yep.
I basically built myself a rocket ship XR 650.
Yep.
Which is
a bit like this one in the background here.
This exact one in the background. This is the actual bike that I rode in 2001.
Yeah, right.
So that's it. That's a HRC kitted Riga shock. Had the Mazzocchi forks in it.
Yep.
And had about as much power as you can handle generally.
yeah. So, more than enough.
Yeah, more than enough. It actually had the same top speed as a CR500.
Yeah, right.
And didn't accelerate much slower.
Yeah.
You know, so it was a weapon.
Yeah.
But it actually, so I think I was about second outright on the way down, just before the second fuel stop, and the clutch fried itself. So literally it fried it and wouldn't. The thing with these things is the clutches was their weak point, and once they start slipping, from start slipping to stop going is within K's. You know, it didn't take very long.
Yeah.
So another DNF. So So 2001 was out the door with a broken bike. I ended up coming back into Finke in a chopper. My mate picked me up in a chopper and took me for a ride that made me spew. And I've never been in a chopper where they're doing 360s and
right. Were you chasing someone?
We did for a while. We followed some bikes into Finke, but then when we got to the river, he was just like, "Hey, check this out," and he just started he was a musterer. He knew how to fly. Yeah, check this out, man. And I don't know if anyone I don't understand choppers, but you got to hold your foot on the rudder on the chopper to keep the chopper going straight.
Yeah.
And when you take your foot off the rudder, the whole cabin does a rotation.
Yeah. Okay.
So because of the props are spinning that way.
Yeah.
So. And he did this a couple of times to me, and I'm like, "Don't do that anymore. I'm gonna hurl in your chopper."
So people at Finke are probably thinking, "Holy shit, this guy's coming in to crash," and you guys are just coming in laughing.
Yeah, we were just running. Mark, he was doing like these stall turns, like going from one side of the bank to the other side of the bank. Just I'm just like, man, get me.
Yeah, no.
Put me on, I'll walk.
I'm not up for this. Yeah.
I'd rather rob a motorbike.
Yeah.
So that was wicked. So that was 2001.
Cool. Yeah.
2002. I rode a 650 again.
Yep.
What happened that year? Oh, I ran out of fuel, like, right. So at Finke end, there's a big jump that everyone gets to see on the videos. There's a big jump at Finke. And the thing actually ran out of fuel. When I landed off the big jump, it actually ran out. The 650's got a bit of fuel on one side and the tap's on the other side. And it actually, when I landed and pulled up, so I had to lift the back wheel up, get the fuel from the other side into the tap side.
Yeah.
And literally from there, started it and held it flat to the finish line, which was like 500 metres away.
Yeah, right.
But lost 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
So the next day I started 6th out of Finke on day 2 and finished 2nd outright. So passed like four bikes on the way home.
Yeah.
Like the things are rocket ships now.
Yeah.
Like in the whoops, I remember Gavin Chapman will get a laugh out of this. Chappie, he was on a 252 stroke from memory.
Yeah.
And we're in the big whoops around Bundooma, around the second fuel stop area. Yeah. And he actually, I passed him out of Finke. And then he caught me back up in the big whoops because the big 650 is no good in whoops.
Big pig.
Big pig, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know how many times I nearly killed him because these things I was using the whole track. Like just going from one side of the track to the other. Anyway, I could see this front wheel pop into the corner of my vision, and then he'd brake hard because I'm swapping, going from, and then I'd come up this side, and then he'd back out. Anyway, he ended up getting past me in the whoops. Yeah. And then we got about not even a Rodinga, just the other side of Alice Creek, and got into that fast stuff again, and I just fucking wheeled him up and blew past him.
See you later.
Yeah, see you later. And I only caught Brad Williscroft. He was in 2nd outright. That was the year Rick Hall won it. Yeah. Brad Williscroft was in 2nd outright, and I only caught him at about just around the back of Yorninga, so that's like a 30k mark.
Yeah, okay.
I caught him because this thing had 15 k's an hour top speed over his bike.
Yeah.
And I literally just blew past him.
He was standing still.
Literally, and he had no idea I was coming.
Nah.
So he came up to me afterwards and said, "Man, you frightened the shit out of me."
Where did you come from?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. And then because you come around the back of there, and then there was a big set of whoops, and they only went for about 100 metres, and they were big whoops.
Yeah.
And I remember coming into them thinking, if I back off now, he's going to come back past me.
Yeah.
So I just left it flat in top gear, and then I just thought, nah, I'm not going to make it doing that. So I went back to 4th gear and still held it flat and just went
and just smashed it.
Hit these whoops so fast. And the thing never even had time to even get out of shape because it just went across the top of it.
It was going that quick.
Yeah, it was like, I'm just like,
that's
thank
sick.
God. And then I just, I finished 2nd behind Rick that year.
Yeah.
It was a good feeling, but not. It was good to get a result on the 650. I really love the 650.
Oh yeah.
Good bike.
Definitely.
And then 93, I don't know, my first year on a CRF 450. So they only got released in 2002. So in 2003, I prepared a CRF 450R.
Yeah.
Thing was good. Thing was fast.
Yeah.
Got the thing handling pretty good. Was first into Finke on day 1 and was first on the way home on day 2.
Yeah.
And Griffo nearly caught me. So we were at the Merivale boundary. Black Gate, as people would know.
Yeah, Black Gate,
And I looked over my shoulder and I could see him. He'd caught me up in the whoops because I was just cruising, I thought there was no
Same
pressure.
thing, you didn't know how quick
Didn't know how fast to go,
Yeah.
And I looked back and he's like, oh, fuck, I better cranked it up.
Cranked it through Rodinga.
Yeah, got on the gas, pulled about 2 minutes on him between there. And then at the 20k June coming home, I overcooked it into a set of whoops. It was around a corner.
Yeah.
And the back wheel dropped into the wheel tracks that the sweep vehicle left, and the front wheel stayed out, and I left the front whoop. I just banged it out of top gear wide open, so I would have been doing 140, I reckon, easy.
Yeah.
And the thing just went full lock sideways into the biggest set of whoops and just javeled me.
Wheeled.
Yeah, just destroyed the bike, pulled the shock apart,
Holy
put
shit.
the handlebars down, pulled this thumb out of its socket. The thumb was actually down here, dislocated.
Oh, shit.
I couldn't even ride the bike.
No.
I picked it up, I tried to ride it.
You got up and you were fine.
Nearly crashed it because the shock wasn't working.
The bike looked like a pretzel.
Yeah, literally. Fried the bike.
Yeah.
Truly. So I ended up pulling out on the access road, so I went from hero to zero in like a split second.
Yeah.
Didn't even finish the race.
Over.
And 20 k's
town.
from the finish line.
Yeah.
So
that's how crazy Finke is, eh? It can all come to an end so quick.
That's it, literally. And it was a miscalculation on my part that caused the accident. So, and it was literally a split second. I should have backed off.
Yeah.
A split second earlier, would have been able to line up the whoops better.
Yeah, yeah.
Thought I had time, thought I had it under control.
Yeah.
All
gone.
All gone, just literally.
All over Red
Another
Rover.
human javelin through the scrub.
Yeah. Fire out.
So that was 2003, ended up in the ambulance.
Yeah.
Went and got checked out. I only had a broken thumb at the end of the day, so that wasn't
too bad.
And then 2004 was another year. I didn't prologue that flash. I think I was 6 on prologue.
Yeah.
Had a pretty good run down. I remember, and this is no word of a lie. Me and Jason Hill, I caught him. I reckon he was the grid in front of me, and I caught him about just after the second fuel stop.
Yeah.
On the way down, and we literally bar banged from second fuel to other side of the Finke River.
Yeah, right.
Literally, mate.
And then did you think to yourself, this is it, I've got to get him now?
Yeah. Oh, well, I'd already caught him on time because he left the grid in front of me, so I'd already caught him in it. So I knew I'd start tomorrow in front of him anyway, but Jason Hill was just a mad guy.
No,
he
wouldn't let you go.
Mate, there's stuff that happened on that ride when we were banging bars, and I'm thinking to myself, man, you are a nutter. You are crazy, man.
Yeah.
There's an S section just before the river, just before Finke River.
Yeah.
And literally we were side by side. My bike had a couple of k's an hour top speed on his, and I'd catch him on all the fast stuff because he was a full motocross rider. He wouldn't back off the corners. He'd just wide open round corners.
Yeah.
Anyway, we come into this. It was like a chicane, and he must have practiced this when we were pre-running. But he lined up one side of the windrow. The windrows were real high there. We were in deep sand, and the track had been graded in, and it sort of did the chicane. And he lined up one side windrow, and I'm like, what's he doing? Like, I've backed off to go through the chicane. He's just left the thing wide open, and he's gone up the windrow and used it as a jumped across the track, landed on the track on the other side, completely cut the chicane out of it.
So just jumped an S-bend.
Jumped an S-bend completely, and just completely missed the whole corners. I backed off and went through the corners, and he's pulled 20 metres on me because he just launched it. And I'm like,
that's sick.
He's just
that's so sick.
and I'll never forget. And it was just, man, I don't even know what would put that thought into your head that you could do that.
Like, and he's almost at Finke, like, you think, play it safe?
Yeah, well, exactly.
And did you knew that he was say, like, you're a nutter?
Oh, mate, big time. I actually patted him on the back and said, mate, you are a looper.
You've got some big balls.
You got some big issues.
Big issues.
You got some serious issues.
Yeah.
Anyway, funny thing is, I got to Finke and we, servicing the bike, pulled my seat off, pulled my air filter out. My air filter was covered in muffler packing. And I'm like, oh fuck, my muffler's come apart. You know, like I've blown the muffler up.
Yeah.
Or, they get holes in, whatever. Anyway, so I pulled my muffler off and looked at it, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm like, fuck, what's going on here? Anyway, so I went over to Hilly and said, is your muffler fucking any good, or did you break it? He says, nah, I blew a hole in my muffler. So we were that close that his muffler packing was into my air filter. That's how fucking close we were.
So your bike was breathing off his bike.
I was literally sucking in his dirty fucking air.
Yeah, right.
So that's how close we were for that long. I had his air filter packing on my air filter.
That's pretty crazy.
So I was like, man, that's some serious bar banging going on when you can do that.
Yeah, when you're that close.
Yeah. Anyway, he got past me there, and then we went through the river, and then you get out the other side of the river. There's another big set of whoops, and then there's like a tight 90-degree corner.
Yeah.
And he come in just way too hot, and the whoops were real big and deep. And he just come in, and he's trying to brake, and the bike's in the air, and he just poof, over the back of the corner. So I just
see you later.
Yeah. And I started first the next day and won 2004. That was my 4th win.
Yeah.
And it was the first. I don't know if it was the first actually, but I'd actually gone into the masters class. So my number was like 704.
Yes, I remember on the DVD with the short mudguard. 704. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool to be in the, like, I think I was 35 or 36 years old then.
Win it outright in the masters class.
Yeah,
that's
literally.
Sick.
Yeah. And then so that was my second last year, and then 2005 was my last year, and it was a bit of a. I had a crack at the body was starting to show signs of not being able to do what I've been doing for. So 2004 was my 19th year. Straight, and then 2005 was my 20th year, and I started the injuries that I'd incurred over the years started coming into it, and I couldn't get a good run in, and I ended up finishing 7th in 2005, and the main reason was because the amount of pain that I was in and the injuries that I had sustained. I couldn't ride at a pace where I could be happy. So I knew before I'd even got to the finish line that was my last.
That's your last, because you can't riding in pain.
And there's the fun factor when you're out there and you're winning and everything's going good, the fun factor's really high and there's no pain factor, so it's really like this.
Yeah, that's right.
And then in 2005 it just went like that.
It's not
just
fun anymore.
No fun factor, a lot of pain.
Yeah.
It's just like, and I'd achieved all my goals, and that's when you're out there and you've won. Well, I'd already won 4 Finks by then. I'd had 10 podiums, and I was like, well, what do I need to prove? Well,
that's right.
And I proved to myself, and proving to yourself is your main objective. Like I like to be able to say to people, yes, I've won Fink and all the rest of it, but I need to be able to prove that to myself that I can do that.
That's right.
You set the goal.
You've set goals and you've gone out and achieved them all.
And you go and achieve them. And then I'm thinking, why do I want to keep doing this? I'm flogging a dead horse.
That's right. And it's not some small motocross track that you're cruising around on. It's, if you're not having fun and it's becoming dangerous, it's very dangerous. And it's a dangerous race. And there's no two ways about it. And again, I'd achieved all my goals, and it's like, I'm happy to put my boots away now and get off the bike basically. So it was a big change in my life from being totally committed to Fink since basically 1986 to 2005. That's right.
Fink absorbed my life.
Fink,
like literally, and it's and it was a big decision to not do it anymore, but there was no other decision to be made, and I was happy with the decision that I made. I've had a lot of people ask me, like, how do you just stop like that? And I was like, man, it was actually easy. When it comes to the crunch, it was easy. My body told me I had to do it. So it's
not like you've quit. You quit thinking, I didn't get to win. I wish I could have gone back, and you've done what you've done. So no, literally, I ticked all the boxes. And enjoyed myself and made a lot of friends and learned a lot about setting bikes up. Learned a lot about suspension. Those last few years, I was spending a lot of time on my own bikes, getting suspension, doing a lot of testing. Which wasn't really happening. Nobody was really doing that back then. So I was actually sort of at the forefront of tuning and testing and trying. I was doing my own shocks back then, so it was the start of where my business ended up with. That's right.
Start of GDR basically, even though it wasn't a named business back then, but I was still working in bike shops, but I was still helping people set their bikes up.
And is that where you thought to yourself, like, obviously you're a mechanic, but you thought, now that my time's done, what can I do as a specialty for Fink? And you straight away thought suspension? Yeah,
well, it was. I took on more of a mentoring role to start with. So in 2005, my last Fink, Ryan Bramford actually finished behind me. He was 8th outright. I was 7th outright. And then when we were testing in January 2006, and I was standing on the top of a sand dune and watching Ryan ride around, and his dad was standing next to me, and I actually said to him, I said, if he rides like that in Fink, he can win this race. He's quite capable of winning the race. And Ryan went on to win in 2006, and it was the amount of effort that we put in across the board with the bike preparation, the bike setup, the amount of pre-running we did. We had a really good result for him. And that was part of, like, when I decided to give up, I decided to give all my information and all the help I could to others try and improve their chances of achieving their goals. And Ryan was one of the first to get the benefit of it, and then Grabbo come along, and Grabbo had his own stuff going on then, and he won for a few years. Then Ryan got a couple of seconds behind him. But we developed more and more into suspension, and then in 2009, December 2009, I actually left the bike shop industry, and I've been in bike shops all my life. I've worked in bike shops from 14 years old, basically. So I went. I actually started GDR in January 2010, so I started my own suspension company in 2010. And then we went on to, building more suspension for different people. Look, the list goes on. I did all Toby Price's stuff when he was racing. Mate, there's so many people that I've helped get to the top of the podium.
That's
right up till nowadays, where I'm doing David Walsh's bikes, and the KDM team and the Husky team, Jake Smith's bike. I did Ivan Long's bike back then. I did Ty Simmons's bike. Bo Rouston's. There was a whole heap of names.
A lot of big names.
A lot of big names of the guys that were up the front. Luke Hayes as well. He's another one. He was a top 3 guy. So there was a lot going on once we sort of got our head around suspension, and and now I do it semi-full-time. It's a
Yeah.
part-time job, but it's nearly a full-time job.
Yeah.
Trying to keep bikes out there and keep
that's
suspension
right.
on the road, and
Yeah.
it's just testing, perfecting,
Yeah.
letting the ideas in your head flow out onto the track. I think that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing. You know,
Yeah.
I understand how the shocks work, but actually making, well, on paper you know how they work, but until you put the settings in there and go down the track, you don't know the results. So
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's how you literally have to be able to run that. Yeah, that's how you get improvements on that race. You need to test, and you need to get to the next level. You know, so.
Yeah, and I'm sure everyone appreciates how good it is to have you down there literally watching them, and then, you know, if they're unsure of why it's doing what it's doing, you can just tell them straight up. You know?
Yeah. And then literally that's part of the deal. You know, that's what I do with David, and literally he spends a lot of time down the track without me, and then when there's certain periods when we're getting to the serious end of the deal, then we're down there every weekend, and we're taking, you know, 2 or 3 shocks down with us. We're putting one shock in, trying it, putting another shock in, trying it. The forks are probably a little bit easier. We've got them pretty much nailed. So but look, there's a lot to it, and it's not just one setting does everybody. Like I've had a team of 3 riders, and not one of them riders has had the same setup as the other rider.
They're all different.
You know, you got 3 different bikes, 3 different riders, and 3 different lots of suspension. You know, so you're really chasing perfection for all of them. You know, so and it's not an easy deal, but
it's crazy to think, since, you know, you guys started racing back then, you would have had, you know, borderline stock bikes, to how much things change over the last 10-15 years to like what people are doing now with suspension and forks and engine work and steg pegs and steering dampers and all the rest. Everyone's got all the, you know, bits and pieces.
And the whole race has gone to another level as well. You know, like it used to be a local race there and back. It used to be, you know, there used to be, even back in the 80s, late 80s, you know, someone doing a bit of...
Yeah, that sounds right.
a bit of rocket chip tuning. Back then, you know, Stephen Galls, Craig Dack, David Armstrong. So these are all top motocross guys. Used to come to Finke because it was a money thing. Because 10 grand prize money back then was big money. And 10 grand prize money's been out there for a long time with Finke. And it lured a lot of the big motocross riders in. And David Armstrong was one of the very few that actually... Or Stephen Gall won a couple as well. But it was almost like a locals against interstaters back then. You know? And we sort of dominated because it was our backyard, so we could,
that's right.
We could come down the track whenever we wanted and do more testing. So we sort of had the upper hand on them, but they had more riding ability than us, you know, because
that was their job.
That was their job, exactly. Full motocross riders. So it was a good thing. It was a lot of banter going on back then. As well, you know,
I'm sure. And it even is crazy these days to see the people we get up. Like you said, you know, you got Toby Price come for it. You know, Ty Simmons, Ben Grabham, even Colton Udall, Steve Hengeveld from America. It's pretty cool how much it's grown and how much bigger and like faster it gets every year.
The level of professionalism's out the door. You know, like it's, and the manufacturers that are chasing the market have realised that people watch Finke, and what wins Finke sells. So people, you know, like KTMs are now dominated for quite a few years now. And you look at the KTM sales numbers and they've skyrocketed. You know, and the product that they're building is good and reliable and capable of winning races, so people will go and buy them. And that's and the manufacturers pick that up. They know that Finke's valuable. So as a marketing tool, you know, like
for reliability and everything.
It's the hardest race, you know, like and if you can get a bike to win Finke regularly, then people take note.
Definitely.
And it stepped it up. So that brought all the big manufacturers. Honda's put a lot of effort into it. Like we dominated on Hondas for like 13 years straight on CR500s and then CRFs, and then so KTM were behind, and Jeff Lee's, credit to him, he never gave up. He put a lot of money and a lot of time and effort into getting a KTM up onto the podium. You know.
I do remember watching that video of him saying he didn't see one KTM inside the top 20, and he wasn't real happy about it. And he really wanted to bring him up.
And it it was a marketing thing for him, but it was personal for him.
Yes,
he was like, man, I want to win that race.
Oh yeah, I want us to dominate.
Exactly, and it took him a while, but he got there, and he bought good riders, and he trained good riders, and he bought good products, and when you start putting Toby Price onto a bike and sending him down the track, and even Ben Grabham, Toby, and then even your Ty Simmonses and all them guys, they're all part of them teams back then.
Yeah.
And they're all top 3 riders, And by the time you put Toby's domination in there, he's won 6 Finks now, so that's 6 KTM wins that they had just from one rider.
Yeah, exactly.
And as you well know, Toby's probably the best desert rider in the country, on the world even.
By far, I think.
So smart marketing has brought Fink to a new level, basically, and it's good. It's good for everything. Good for the town.
Yeah.
Good for the manufacturers.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's by far the biggest event in Alice Springs in the year. Yeah. And probably my favourite, for sure.
It's my busiest time of the year, which makes it a bit hard.
Busy time for you.
Look, I enjoy it. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't. So.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's right.
The other thing that I have achieved, and not many people know, well, people that know, but the out of the industry don't.
Yeah.
So in 1999 was my first ever Australian safari.
Yes.
So it started in Alice Springs and finished in Darwin. So in a 7-day period, we did 5,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
So we went down to Ayers Rock, back up to Alice, and then rode all the way up to Darwin, basically backtracks and dirt roads or whatever.
Yeah. And
so that was my first attempt ever at map reading. And big days, like one of the days was a 950k day on the bike, and it was 11 and a half hours we spent on the bike.
Far out. That would have been a real change.
So going from Fink doing a sprint race, and everyone said that this was the common misconception from the general public, was Fink riders, you don't need any brains, you can just go flat out and you can win, so far from the truth that you wouldn't believe. But when it comes to safari, the whole ball changes, because you've got maps to read, you've got calculations to be making continuously on the bike. So you're riding the bike, you're still racing, but your brain's attached to a map.
Yeah,
and you're calculating, and you're doing all this other work at the same time. Plus you're trying to look after your machinery. You don't want to get a flat tyre, you don't want to break it, you don't want to crash, so otherwise you don't finish the day, So the safari's a whole different ball game. But so my first attempt in 1999, I won the race.
Yeah, right.
So it was
far out.
It was a Honda Australia supported ride. They gave me the bike, they had the crew, they had a truck. Literally, I just brought my gear bag, jumped on the bike, rode it, got off, told them what I'd broken on the day, went out to sleep, whatever, feed, get up the next morning, ride again.
Factory.
It was full factory, and literally it was the first time in my life I literally had a full factory ride.
That's right.
And even though the bike I rode was the last model of the XR600, the original XR600. And the thing had about 40 horsepower, it felt like. Because it's got, we could carry 35 litres of fuel. The thing was heavy. We did, I remember one day looking at the speedo, and I was literally laying on the tank with this huge tailwind, and I got 155 k's an hour out of it.
Far out.
Literally, man. And I've just jumped off CR500s and, bikes that were doing, in excess of 180 kilometres an hour. But that was the deal. You had to make it through the day. So that was in 1999. I won the Australian Safari, and then in 2000 I went to America and went over there for a race over there called the Nevada 2000, and I crashed on day one and dislocated my shoulder, and I couldn't compete or finish that race.
Yeah, right.
And the time period between that race and coming back to do the safari, my shoulder hadn't healed and I needed surgery to repair it. So I couldn't even race the safari with my number one plate, which I was mostly gutted about. And then in 2002, I come back and got second outright behind Andy Caldercock.
Yeah, right.
And then I did another safari, and it was in New South Wales, and I didn't actually crash, but my foot came off the foot peg and got jammed in between the ground and the foot peg and broke my ankle.
Yeah, right.
So that was another DNF. That was my first DNF for the safari. So out of 3 safaris, I got a first, a second, and a DNF.
Yeah. Oh, that's not too bad.
So that was my history for that. So that's a bit more background on what I did. and I still have quite a good passion for safari stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
that's pretty unreal to just go there, like you said, your first year and win it. That would have been awesome.
It shut up a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people thought, oh, Finke rider, he won't be able to do this. It's too
this
hard.
Guy's coming from Alice Springs.
He can't read a map. He won't be able to know where, you know, he'll get lost all the time, you know.
Yeah.
But literally,
Yeah.
I put all the knockers to sleep and won the race. You know,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Showed them how the desert pigs do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Great chatting with you, Jaden.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for being on the podcast.
No worries, mate.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.
Cool.